Guyana province, which ended on the west bank of the Essequibo River, was part of Venezuela. Second period, from 1840 to 1899, entitled Imperial Aggression, Dispossession and Arbitration Fraud. In 1840, the British government sent Prussian explorer Robert Schomburg to draw a map of the area. Schomburg arbitrarily drew a line west of the Essequibo River as the new border of the British colony with Venezuela. This illegal annexation consisted of 4,920 square kilometers. Based on the Schomburg map, a British map was published in London, according to which British Guyana intended to annex 141,000 square kilometers. In 1842, the Venezuelan government demanded the British government to remove the posts placed at the points established by the second Schomburg line. The British government withdrew the posts, thus acknowledging Venezuelan sovereignty. Then in 1850, an agreement was reached between Great Britain and Venezuela, where both countries agreed not to occupy the disputed territory between the second Schomburg line of 1840 and the Essequibo River. However, in 1887, Venezuela broke off relations with Great Britain, for the latter disregarded the 1850 agreement and continued annexing territory west of the Essequibo River. Following, between 1893 and 1895, Venezuela negotiated the acceptance of an arbitration by Great Britain. However, in 1895, the U.S. became involved by proclaiming the Monroe Doctrine that I briefly mentioned before, which considered any territorial appropriation in the Americas by European powers a threat to its interests. Then in 1897, the Treaty of Washington was signed. In it, the US and Great Britain exercised tremendous pressure against Venezuela and forced it to accept the arbitration under disadvantageous conditions. For instance, no Venezuelan would be part of the arbitration commission. Venezuela was represented by 2 Americans. Finally, in 1899, in violation of the terms of the 1897 Treaty of Washington, the arbitrators decided to strip Venezuela of 90% of the Essequibo territory. Third period, from 1900 to 1966, gunboat, imperial diplomacy, fraud, denunciation, the awakening of consciousness, and the Geneva Agreement. A key element in this period was the publication in 1949 of the memorandum by Severo Malet-Prevost, a young U.S. lawyer who participated in the arbitral award of 1899. In his memorandum, Malet-Prevost confessed how the Paris arbitrators plotted against Venezuela. Hence, in 1962, Venezuelan Foreign Minister Marcos Falcón Briceño denounced the fraudulent settlement of the 1899 arbitral award before the 17th UN General Assembly, thus strengthening on solid grounds the path towards the vindication of Venezuelans' rights injured by the dispossession, which led to the signing of the Geneva Agreement. In the latter, the governments of Venezuela, Great Britain, and the colony of British Guyana, today the Co-Operative Republic of Guyana, recognized the existence of a dispute over the sovereignty of the Essequibo territory and established the procedures to find a solution by peaceful means. Fourth period, from 1966 to 2015, the Geneva Agreement and the search for practical solutions satisfactory to both parties. During this period, all parties duly engaged in peaceful and meaningful conversations and negotiations within the framework of the 1966 Geneva Agreement. Many agreements were reached in this period, cordially and bilaterally. For instance, in 1970, the Protocol of Port of Spain was signed among Guyana, the UK, and Venezuela to freeze negotiations for 12 years. Also, in 1987, Guyana and Venezuela decided bilaterally to accept the good offices method, where a respected individual agreed by all parties and appointed by the UN served as facilitator to the controversy. There have been 4 good officers: Alistair McIntyre from 1989 to 1998, Oliver Jackman 1999-2007, Norman Girvan from 2010 to 2014, and Doug Nylander from 2017 to 2018. Also in this period, the late Venezuelan president, His Excellency Hugo Chavez, made a state visit to Guyana in 2004, where he met the former Guyanese president, His Excellency Dr. Barrett Jagdeo, currently the vice president. In his visit, President Chavez proposed to privilege integration and exchange mechanisms over territorial differences, always within the framework of the Geneva Agreement. Equally, in 2005, Guyana signed the Petrocaribe Agreement and joined the Petrocaribe. And in 2013, the current Venezuelan president, His Excellency Nicolás Maduro, paid an official visit to Guyana, where he met former Guyanese president, His Excellency Ronald Ramotar. Fifth period, from 2015 to 2023, conspiracy against Venezuela. Starting in 2015 and departing from the cordial and mutual dialogue offered to both countries by the 1966 Geneva Accord, Guyana began to act unilaterally in this dispute, adding to the series of destabilizing and meddling actions forced against Venezuela that also began in 2015 with the explicit purpose of regime change, as clearly stated by the U.S. State Department. Thus, on March 5th, 2015, Guyana installed an offshore platform in the maritime border of the Essequibo territory, within waters still awaiting demarcation, in clear violation of the 1966 Geneva Agreement and international law. In addition, Guyana announced in May 2015 that ExxonMobil made its world-famous find in the Lisa-1 well, 191 kilometers offshore, with recoverable reserves of 500 million barrels. Then, in 2018, Guyana filed a unilateral claim, what I was mentioning before the International Court of Justice for the said court to declare the validity of the 1899 arbitral award. Venezuela adopted the position of non-appellant party, consistent with its historical position of non-recognition of jurisdiction of the ICJ to resolve the dispute. We also now know that ExxonMobil provided the government of Guyana the amount of US $15 million earmarked to cover Guyana's legal and solicitors' expenses as the ICJ, as stated by former Guyanese Natural Resource Minister Raphael Trotman in his book entitled From Destiny to Prosperity. Thereafter, in 2020, the ICJ granted itself jurisdiction to hear the validity of the 1899 arbitral award and the related question of the definite settlement of the land boundary dispute between Guyana and Venezuela. In 2022, Her Excellency Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez described as inadmissible the request filed by Guyana before the ICJ. Her Excellency Vice President Rodriguez said, and I quote, "Venezuela respects and appreciates the ICJ as the main judicial organ of the UN and continues to believe that this court has no jurisdiction over the case. Nevertheless, we shall demonstrate that Guyana's request is inadmissible." End of quote. Following, in April 2023, the ICJ issued the ruling by which it declared the preliminary objection raised by Venezuela inadmissible and decided to go to the merits of the case. Thereafter, it set April 8th, 2024, next year, as the deadline for Venezuela to submit its report. Sixth and final period, consultative referendum, a new stage. The time is now, the time has come. On September 21st, the Venezuelan National Assembly unanimously approved the calling of a consultative referendum for the people to reinforce the defense of the Guyana Essequibo and Venezuela's inalienable rights over that territory. The proposed 5 questions of the consultative referendum read as follows. 1. Do you agree to reject by all means, in accordance with the law, the fraudulent line imposed by the 1899 Paris arbitral award, which seeks to dispossess us for of our Guyana Essequibo? Question number 2. Do you support the 1966 Geneva Agreement as the only valid legal instrument to reach a practical and satisfactory solution for Venezuela and Guyana regarding the dispute over the territory of the Guyana Essequibo? Question number 3. Do you agree with Venezuela's historical position of not recognizing the jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice to settle the territorial dispute over the Guyana Essequibo? Question number 4. Do you agree to oppose, by all means, in accordance with the law, Guyana's claim to unilaterally dispose of a sea pending delimitation illegally and in violation of international law? And the last question, number 5. Do you agree with the creation of the state of Guyana Essequibo and the development of an accelerated plan for the comprehensive care of the current and future population of that territory, including, among others, the granting of Venezuelan citizenship and identity cards in accordance with the Geneva Agreement and international law, thus incorporating said state in the map of the Venezuelan territory? These are the 5 questions. I would like to end by saying that this consultative referendum, as well as the other 6 consultative referendums called in Venezuela in the past 25 years, all of them in accordance to Article 71 of the Venezuelan Constitution, is the people's expression and manifestation over a matter of utmost importance, which, as you have seen, dates back to colonial times. In this referendum, Venezuelans will be allowed to vote on those 5 questions, which, to our understanding, have been stumbling blocks to the settlement of the Guyana Essequibo territorial controversy. The consultative referendum would become a clear mandate by the people to the Venezuelan state to articulate our grievances according to the 5 questions set in it. And finally, it constitutes a message to the world that Venezuela is eager to seek dialogue in accordance with established parameters of international law, namely the Geneva Agreement and the UN Charter, as a guarantee of fairness and regional peace. I do thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Just to provide an update to the audience and to the Ambassador, I checked that I am getting the stream on YouTube, and I am seeing individuals online, and I am seeing some questions and comments coming in, which we would monitor and feed to you when the question and answer section comes along. Yes, yes. Right. Moving along with the agenda, I would like to invite MP Wills to the podium to bring his remarks.
Buenas noches.
Good
Gracias.
evening, everyone.
Saludo al doctor Vincent Henry, director de estudios laborales
My
de la
greetings to the
University
director
Cipriani
of the
College,
Laboratory Studies,
nuestro embajador de la República Bolivariana de Venezuela acá en Trinidad y Tobago, compañero Jacobo Torres, por supuesto los compañeros trabajadores presentes acá y los que están conectados por vía digital. Bueno, nosotros, como se llama el evento, desde la perspectiva de los venezolanos, nosotros vamos a hablar más allá de como la perspectiva de los trabajadores
we are going to
venezolanos.
talk about from the perspective of the laborers.
Nosotros tenemos un precepto constitucional.
We have a constitutional
Quiero,
concept.
en el diálogo que estuvimos el día de ayer, conversando con algunos trabajadores que hacen vida laboral en Trinidad y Tobago, entendimos que hay un mensaje del cual nosotros queremos desmentir totalmente como venezolanos, porque somos un país históricamente amante de la paz, y precisamente esta situación que estamos viviendo hoy con el pueblo guyanés es parte de la historia que nosotros los venezolanos y venezolanas tenemos desde muchísimos años atrás. Nosotros siempre hemos sido amantes de la paz y así es el ejemplo que seguimos de Simón Bolívar, de Zamora, de Miranda, de todos nuestros próceres, nuestros libertadores. Siempre hemos sido amantes de la paz y nunca hemos sido un ejército guerrero, un ejército invasor y mucho menos imperialista. Por lo tanto, dejamos totalmente claro, y quiero invocar el artículo 5 de nuestra Constitución. El artículo 5 de nuestra Constitución
In the article number 5 of the Constitution,
es una constitución que en Venezuela
which
fue
is a
refrendada por el
constitution
pueblo,
that we have in
porque
Venezuela,
en Venezuela, a través de una constituyente en 1999,
in
hicimos esta
1999,
constitución.
we had this booked.
Y el poder en Venezuela lo ejerce el pueblo
And the
venezolano.
power is actually exercised by the people in Venezuela.
Y en el tema que hoy nos trae acá, yo quiero leer el artículo 5,
And in this
de esta
thing that we are dealing
Constitución.
with today, I want to read the article number 5,
que dice:
which reads,
la soberanía reside intransferiblemente en el pueblo,
the
quien la
sovereignty
ejercerá directamente
resides
en forma
purely in
prevista
the people,
en esta Constitución. O sea, la soberanía es del pueblo.
meaning
Y en
that
esta
the
Constitución dice
sovereignty
cómo la
rests on the
ejercerá.
people.
Bueno, así como dice el artículo 5, quiero también leer el artículo 10,
And as I read the article number
esta
5, I
misma
want to read
Constitución.
article number 10,
que dice: el
Which
territorio y demás espacios geográficos de la República Bolivariana de
the
Venezuela
Bolivarian
son los que
territory and
correspondan a la Capitanía General
spaces
de Venezuela antes de la transformación política iniciada el 19 de abril de 1810.
belong to the Venezuelan people before the political act of 1910,
con las modificaciones resultantes de los tratados y laudos arbitrales no viciados de nulidad, perdón.
in which the modifications can
Estos dos artículos los quise leer, uno por la que se entienda que la soberanía la ejerce el pueblo, y bueno, en este caso que nos dice que estamos actualmente convocados a un referéndum que convocó la Asamblea Nacional, porque el artículo 71 de esta misma Constitución dice: las materias de especial trascendencia nacional podrán ser sometidas
okay, good.
a referendo consultivo. Y bueno, para nosotros una trascendencia nacional e histórica es el Esequibo que es nuestro y que nosotros hemos venido a través de la historia debatiendo con diferentes gobiernos, tanto guyaneses como los gobiernos venezolanos, y hemos sido reiterativos en el tema de que nos acogemos al convenio de Ginebra 1966. Pero nosotros también, en la conversación que estuvimos acá con algunos compañeros, entendimos que se trata de confundir la realidad de Venezuela. Por ejemplo, nosotros, el gobierno revolucionario, en la organización de los pueblos, la integración, creamos Petrocaribe. ¿Qué es Petrocaribe? No es otra cosa que
afuera sí yo oigo, pero aquí adentro no. Ya no me entiendo.
¿sí?
Okay.
De nuevo. Buenas noches.
Good night.
Un saludo al doctor Andrés Vicent Henry,
I can to
director
greet
de
to the
estudios laborales
doctor
de la Universidad Cipriani College,
for the Ciprianis College,
embajador de la República Bolivariana de Venezuela en Trinidad y Tobago,
to the ambassador of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela en Trinidad and Tobago,
a los compañeros presentes, los trabajadores y
To
los
all
que estén
the
conectados
workers.
por la vía online. Saludos
the people online,
por
greetings
de parte de la Central Bolivariana Socialista de Trabajadores de Venezuela.
from the Bolivarian Central of the Workers from Venezuela.
Hoy nosotros hemos venido acá a hablar de nuestra realidad,
Today we are here to speak with you about our reality,
más allá de la perspectiva
more
de
far away
el
from the
Estado venezolano.
perspective.
Hoy nos referiremos a la perspectiva desde los trabajadores, las trabajadoras
We want
venezolanas.
today to refer from the workers' perspective.
En el diálogo que hemos tenido acá en Trinidad y Tobago con algunos trabajadores y trabajadoras,
The dialogue that we sustain with some workers here in Trinidad,
hemos observado que hay una campaña
we observed some kind of campaign
contra Venezuela
against Venezuela
que dice ser que vamos a invadir a Guyana.
that is telling that Venezuela want to invade Guyana.
Nosotros queremos decir que nosotros somos un país amante de la paz,
We want to
histórica,
tell that we are a country who love the peace.
históricamente ha sido así.
Historically has been this way for a long time ago.
Y en esta constitución
In this constitution
que nos dimos en la Revolución Bolivariana,
after the Bolivarian Revolution,
nosotros plasmamos parte de la disyuntiva que está hoy en desarrollo con
we left no part of the all that we are discussing today
el gobierno guyanés.
with the government of the Republic of Guyana.
Me permito leer el artículo 10 de esta constitución.
I want to read the article number 10 of our constitution.
El territorio y
The-
demás espacios geográficos
The territorial geographic space
son los que correspondan a la Capitanía General de Venezuela,
are in correspondence to the General Capitany of Venezuela.
antes de la transformación política iniciada el 19 de abril de 1810.
Before the political transformation initiated in the 19th of April 1810 in the April 19, sorry because it was go ahead.
Con las modificaciones resultantes de los tratados
With the modification result of the treatment
y laudos arbitrales
y laudos radicales from
no viciados de nulidad.
no viciados in that.
Este artículo constitucional
This constitutional article
nos marca la ruta por la cual y la
traces
razón
the path
por la
in
cual
which the Venezuelan government
históricamente
Historically,
hemos defendido
Transit.
el territorio de la Guayana Esequiba.
they are asking about the Essequibo territorial in Guyana.
Es bueno recordar que en el 2015 el presidente para entonces del imperio genocida de los Estados Unidos,
In
Barack
2015,
Obama,
in 2015, the president of the United States
declara a Venezuela
declared Venezuela
como un enemigo,
as enemy
una amenaza para los
Amenaza.
una amenaza para los intereses
to
de los
the
Estados Unidos.
interest of the.
Coincidencialmente en ese momento, en ese año,
Coincidentally, here,
la ExxonMobil
la ExxonMobil
está
Mobil.
haciendo exploraciones y obteniendo del gobierno de Guyana
start to be exploration and obtained from the Guyana government
bloques para explotar petróleo y gas.
lot to exploit gas and oil.
Con esto quiero decir que la ExxonMobil
With that, I want to tell that the ExxonMobil mobile
está actuando como un instrumento del imperio para agredir a Venezuela.
is acting as a tool from the imperialists to agree or trade to Venezuela.
En el 2007,
In 2007,
comandante Chávez
the late
decreta
comandante Hugo Chávez
la nacionalización de las industrias petroleras en Venezuela.
started the nationalization of the gas in Venezuela, the oil and gas in Venezuela.
La ExxonMobil para ese momento tenía dos departamentos, dos bloques,
At that moment, the ExxonMobil
era-
have two blocks,
como era Cerro Negro
Cerro Negro, Black
la-
Cerro
y La Ceiba.
y Lazarillo.
Bueno, por un decreto de soberanía, el gobierno venezolano decide nacionalizar
For a sovereign decree, the government from Venezuela decide
la industria petrolera
nationalize the
sale ExxonMobil de Venezuela.
oil industry in Venezuela, and the ExxonMobil go on to Venezuela.
Luego, esta transnacional demanda a Venezuela por
Then-
14.500 millones de dólares.
Then this transnational gets sued Venezuela for
14.500 millones de dólares. Una demanda en los Estados Unidos.
14,000 millions of dollars. It was a demand of the United States. 14 billions, correct.
Por las razones de que están reclamando los activos que supuestamente tenían en nuestro país.
The reason behind it is that they are claiming for those resources, that
Esta
they-
demanda
assets. Yeah.
Esta demanda fue inicialmente ganada por ExxonMobil
This demand was initially won by ExxonMobil,
y luego nosotros apelamos ante esta demanda y logramos
and afterwards we did appeal,
que no se saliera ExxonMobil con la suya, en este caso la demanda, ¿no?
and we were able to ensure that ExxonMobil was not successful.
Nosotros como trabajadores creemos que parte del accionar hoy de ExxonMobil en
We as
este litigio
laborers believe
entre Guyana y Venezuela,
that
que aún sabiendo que está en territorio, que está en controversia, ha aceptado la explotación de bloques petrolíferos y gasíferos en ese sector.
we believe that Guyana has accepted the exploitation of these blocks, knowing the law that was mentioned earlier.
Y esto ha agudizado, por supuesto, con todo el poder de la ExxonMobil en
This, of
apoyo
course,
del
has
gobierno
been
guyanés,
worsened by the whole power of the ExxonMobil.
ha agudizado las relaciones con Guyana Esequiba, con el gobierno de Guyana.
Hello, hello. Ah, okay. Vamos a ver. Sí, que hable, que siga hablando.
Ante la otra acusación que hemos
In
observado
relation to the other accusations that we have observed
contra nuestra Venezuela bolivariana
against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela
es
is
contra Petrocaribe,
against Petrocaribe.
un instrumento de integración
Petrocaribe is a tool of integration
creado por el comandante Chávez
created by Commander Hugo Chavez
para
to
ayudarnos
help, to assist
los pueblos.
the
del
people, the Caribbean people.
Hay países que solo contaban con un día de autonomía de combustible.
Some countries have a limited autonomy in terms of their
Con Petrocaribe
fuel,
llegaron
but
a 30 días.
with Petrocaribe, they extended the number of days that they could actually obtain oil to
Esto
30
nos
days.
liberó de las presiones de
The
transnacionales como Exxon,
many Caribbean countries were free from pressure from international oil corporations like ExxonMobil,
realizaban contra sus gobiernos.
that they exercise pressure against some Caribbean nations.
Exxon tiene más de
Ex-
15 años
Exxon has over 15 years
introduciendo demandas contra Venezuela
filing lawsuits against Venezuela
ante organismos internacionales,
before international organizations,
solo porque nuestro gobierno
just because our government
maneja de manera soberana
manages in a sovereign way
y con dignidad
our continuity,
las reservas petroleras de nuestro país,
the oil reserves in our country,
que como saben
as you
son
know,
las más grandes del mundo,
are the largest in the whole world.
y que a través de Petrocaribe
And also through Petrocaribe,
hemos puesto a disposición de los países
we
caribeños
have made available to the Caribbean countries
para liberarnos del yugo colonial
in order to free them from
que nos han impuesto
the
por
colonial
más de
yoke
500 años.
imposed by for over 500 years.
Por lo general, las instituciones internacionales
Generally, international organizations
y ONG
and NGOs
que llegaban a nuestros países
that used to come to our countries,
con una supuesta intención de colaborar,
supposedly with intentions to help,
nos imponían condiciones difíciles.
they
de
actually
cumplir.
imposed difficult conditions on us.
Pretendían imponernos planes
They expected to impose on us
de
plans,
gobierno
government plans,
y hasta los ministros.
and even ministers.
Petrocaribe
Petrocaribe,
llegó
Petrocaribe
aquí a cooperar,
came here to cooperate,
a financiar la energía
to finance energy
tan necesaria para nuestros pueblos,
so needed for our people,
sin imponer condiciones.
without imposing any kind of conditions.
Nunca pretendimos imponer
We
planes
never
ni ministros.
tried to impose plans or ministers.
Siempre hemos actuado
We have always acted
con fraternidad
with fraternity
y respeto.
and respect.
En el Caribe
In the Caribbean,
hay países que,
there are countries in the Caribbean
bajo la coacción
which, under
de
pressure,
empresas transnacionales
pressure from international companies
y gobiernos imperialistas,
and imperial governments,
reconocieron a Guaidó como presidente interino.
actually recognized Juan Guaidó as interim president of Venezuela.
Ahora sufren crisis energéticas
Now they're suffering from energy crisis,
y desean restablecer sus
En-
relaciones con Petrocaribe.
and they wish they can reestablish relations with Petrocaribe.
Pero las presiones
But pressure,
imperialistas
but imperial pressure
se lo dificultan.
make it difficult.
¿Cuántas presiones han recibido nuestros gobiernos
How much pressure our governments have received
para que desistamos de Petrocaribe?
to exit, to finish Petrocaribe?
Todos lo sabemos.
We all know.
Para nosotros,
To us,
el Caribe
in the Caribbean,
es
it is very important.
la dignidad.
Dignity.
Son gente digna.
Caribbean people are people with dignity,
Deben tratarnos con respeto.
and us Caribbean people must be treated with respect.
Y por tener dignidad no podemos
And because we have dignity, we can't,
ponernos del lado
we,
de la injusticia.
we cannot be on the side of unfairness.
Todos aquí debemos conocer la historia
We all here should
del
know
territorio Esequibo.
the history of the Essequibo territory.
No fueron nuestros hermanos
It wasn't our brothers and sisters from Guyana who took it away from us. It was the British, the same who arrived in these lands to enslave us, to impose a life without dignity. The British and the Americans conspired to create divisions among ourselves. That's why we have a mandate to find the best solution to solve this issue. And the way to solve this problem is found in the 1966 Geneva Agreement. We want to say that Petrocaribe goes beyond just oil. It is about other sources of energy, about socio-economic development, mechanism of commercial compensation through payments, on goods and services. It is an agreement for the construction of a geopolitical bloc in Latin America and the Caribbean. All the historical aspect from the times of the captaincy that escucho, pero si se le puede subir más volumen mejor.
Now. So we are going to proceed quickly and move along to our next speaker, which is the keynote speaker, the Honorable Jacob Torres, Venezuelan MP and trade union leader. Mr. Torres.
Bueno, buenas tardes.
Good afternoon.
Primero, bueno, las autoridades del CCLCS College
First, all protocols being established.
por darnos esta oportunidad
Thank
de
you
estar acá
to all the authorities from the college for giving us the opportunity to be here
y explicar
and to explain
la verdad de
the
Venezuela.
truth about Venezuela.
Porque en definitiva
Because definitely
están intentando
they're
satanizar
trying
a
to
nuestro país
satanize, demonize our country.
y queremos reiterar
And we
algunas
would
cosas.
like to emphasize certain things.
La primera,
First,
somos un pueblo de
we-
libertadores,
we are a people, a country of liberators,
no de conquistadores.
not of conquerors.
Con Simón Bolívar, que es
Simón
nuestro legado
Simón
principal,
Bolívar is our main legacy,
y con toda la fuerza
and with
inspiradora
all
de
the
nuestro presidente,
inspiring force
Hugo
of
Chávez.
our president Hugo Chávez,
porque esa ha sido la
because
vocación de
that has
Venezuela.
been the desire of Venezuela.
Por lo tanto, está
Therefore,
muy lejos de nosotros
It's far away from us
que se pretenda
to
acusarnos
accuse us
de sojuzgar pueblos,
of trying to
someter
subjugate people
naciones.
or to punish nations.
Al contrario,
On the contrary,
si algo hemos hecho
if we have done something
es practicar la
is-
solidaridad
is to practice solidarity, to exercise solidarity.
cuando entendimos
When we understood
que en el caso del petróleo venezolano
that in the case of Venezuelan oil,
no era simplemente una fuente de ganancia y
it,
renta
it
para
wasn't
Venezuela,
just a way to of revenue. It wasn't just a way to earn income,
sino una
but
fuente de desarrollo para
it,
nuestros pueblos.
it was a way to develop our people.
Es decir, darle el
That
carácter
that
de
means
mercancía
we took away the merchandise character
para el desarrollo social
and transform it into the social development of our people.
de un lugar.
Second,
Creo que es importante
I think it's important to understand
que más allá de la barrera
that
idiomática,
beyond the language barrier,
inglés,
English, French, or Spanish,
o castellano,
or Castilian,
que son los idiomas,
which are the languages of conquerors,
compartimos un territorio
we
común.
share a common territory.
Nosotros tenemos
We
alrededor
have
de 140
about
kilómetros
140,000 kilometers of Caribbean Sea space. Therefore,
tan caribeños.
we are as Caribbean as you are.
La diferencia es que ustedes
The
hablan
difference is that you speak English
en español.
and we speak Spanish. That's the only difference.
Por lo tanto, compartimos
Therefore,
vida,
we share
compartimos historia,
life, histories, or stories.
y por qué no,
And why not?
compartimos un
We share the future,
que es lo que en definitiva
which
queremos hacer de
which we definitely want to conceive from Venezuela as our historical legacy.
y reforzando lo que decía
And strengthening what my comrade Will Rangel said,
para nosotros
for us,
la solidaridad
solidarity
no es
is,
dar de lo que nos sobra,
is not giving away what is remaining,
es compartir lo que
is
necesitamos,
to share what we need.
y esa es la suerte que nos embarca
And that's the future that we have.
a los que viven en las islas
Both those who live on the islands
y a los que vivimos en tierra firme,
and those of us who live in the mainland
con el viejo sueño
with our old dream,
de Miranda,
Francisco de Miranda's dream,
Simón Bolívar,
Simón Bolivar's dream,
de hacer de América
to
una sola,
transform the Americas,
nuestra América,
our Americas, into a zone,
y es un sueño que todavía perseguimos
and we are still pursuing that dream
en nuestra historia.
in our history.
¿Por dónde empieza esta
But
historia?
where does this story or history of Esequibo begins?
Primero un desmentido.
First, we need a disclaimer.
Dicen que históricamente
They said that historically we have nothing to do
Carlos Esequibo.
with the word Esequibo.
Si ustedes quieren saber de
But
dónde salió,
do you know where does the name come from?
que es Guayana Esequibo,
Which is Guyana Esequibo.
de un señor
It-
español
It,
conquistador
it bears the name of a Spanish conqueror
llamado Juan de Esquivel.
named Juan de Esquivel,
Y Esquivel
and
terminó
Esquivel
convirtiéndose en Esequibo.
ended up, the river ended up bearing the name of
Porque
Esquivel
la primera delimitación
because the
territorial
first territorial delimitation
data de 1749,
dates back to 1749 when Ecuador, Argentina, and other territories conquered by Spain. And if I'm not mistaken, in 1777, it was created by royal decree the general captaincy of Venezuela, which had as a territorial boundary the Essequibo River. Everything which is west of the river belongs to Venezuela, according to King Charles of Spain. Decree by King Charles of Spain is territory of the Venezuelan captaincy generals or general captaincy. Therefore, there is a historical, history favors us, favors our position, Because when you are the owner of your house, you have the deeds of your house, and you can demonstrate that this is your house. Since 1777, we have the documentation, which demonstrates that that territory is Venezuelan. Therefore, no one can say that we are being aggressors. We are claiming a historical right of our nation that since 1810, when our comrade said, as our comrade said, was ratified by all the governments which have continuously succeeded in Venezuela with 5 constitutions, and all of them state the Essequibo River as our natural boundary. That scenario was lost in 1849 when they started to move, the British government started to move the boundary, the territorial boundary, all the way until they possessed the whole of the Guyana Essequibo. According to historical research, the expectation of the British was to go all the way to the border of what's now Colombia and to take over the whole of the general captaincy of Venezuela. And in 1899, the dispossession of the land was took place when the United States, the United Kingdom, went to France by the Russian arbitrator. They awarded the territory to the United Kingdom in exchange of Guam, the Philippines, Puerto Rico, and Cuba. The United States took those territories and gave the British the territory that is now in controversy, the controversial territory, in the zone of the Essequibo. That arbitral award, illegal. You want to know something? Venezuela was not represented in that negotiation. A law firm represented Venezuela. A law firm from the United States represented Venezuela. Venezuela wasn't there. And that was denounced in 1949 when one of the lawyers who supposedly represented Venezuela, Mr. Prevost, he left in his testimony, a memorandum, the accusation of the dispossession to which Venezuela was subjected in 1899, and in the arbitral award, where that territory was given to the United Kingdom. So in 1966, the Venezuelan government signed a treaty in Geneva, Switzerland, with the United Kingdom, whereas the United Kingdom recognizes that the territory is in discussion, in negotiations, and declares null and void the arbitral award of 1899. There wasn't, dear friends, those of you who are listening to us, there was not. Guyana did not exist as a nation then. It was British territory. It was British Guyana, ri- right next to Dutch Guyana, which became Suriname. That was in February 1966, in the last century. A few months thereafter, the United Kingdom granted independence to Guyana, and Venezuela generously recognized the Cooperative Republic of Guyana that was just what had just been created, and as the treaty signed with them said, without affecting the territorial in dispute, which borders. Do you know where? On the Essequibo River. Anything that comes from the Essequibo to the west is Venezuela. Everything that is from the Essequibo to the east is Guyanese. There is not one document in the whole face of earth that says otherwise, especially when the instrument that they are trying to argue, which is the arbitral award of 1899, both the British and us, we declared it null and void, and it was replaced by the Geneva Agreement, which, in addition to that, the most important condition in that agreement, in that treaty, specified that anything that is discussed or agreed upon has to be satisfactory for both parties. Therefore, no government, neither them nor us, can take decisions in an unilateral way. And the Secretary General of the UN is the person in charge of overseeing the whole process. And they go to the last resource, which was the International Court of Justice. But in accordance to Article 33 of the UN Charter, both parties need to agree to go to court together. Venezuela proposed in 1966 to go to the ICJ, to the International Court of Justice, but Guyana legitimately said that they didn't want to go to the court. And we respected Guyana's decision because there was a previous agreement. And if I have a previous agreement, the idea is that both of us comply. And don't take me to a court where we don't recognize in this particular case. There are so many more things that we can say, but we don't have much time. Also about the composition of the court, of this International Court of Justice. And all this responds to another problem, another issue. The contradiction has been worsened, and everyone knows the contradiction between the United States and Venezuela. And there is something that Americans love, and that's war games. So they created something called an operation to attack Venezuela from both fronts, and from two fronts, and it began as an invasion game against Venezuelan territory. From the west, Colombia from the west, Brazil from the south, and Guyana from the east. the Colombian army was not brave enough to make that move. The Brazilian army did not want to take that step. So the only one left was Guyana. That's why all the contradictions began to worsen. And from there on, a systematic plan of aggression against Venezuela began, financed by ExxonMobil, which are the power behind the throne, the big oil international companies, because before they didn't care about that territory until they found oil. Now it is important, especially when oil reserves in the United States are dwindling down, because they're consuming more oil than the amount that they produce, and the shale gas, which is terrible for the economy, it's not even enough. It is terrible for the environment. It's not enough to sustain the state, the American state. So they use this kind of bait for us to go after it. And I would like to ratify to all of you to all the listeners, all of you and those of you who are here in the audience, we will not go to war. We will not we will not fall into a provocation. We are people of dialogue. We are peaceful people. And we are going to defend all the way to the end. Because there is something important that we cannot forget. I think since 2014, if I'm not mistaken, at the CELAC summit in Havana, Latin America was declared as a zone of peace. And the Caribbean is a zone of peace. Therefore, hardly anyone can even conceive that we would invade another country, much less a country next to us with whom we share a border. Hence, with that context, this systematic attack is implemented. We are just defending our dignity, as my friend said. We are defending a historical right that no one, sorry to be repetitive, no one has the right to take away from us. And as our vice president in our country, this is not about discussing whether it's oil, gas, diamonds, gold. No. It is about the dignity of a people. It's the history of a country, and it's our historical legacy, the legacy of Simón Bolívar, of whom we are utmost proud to be their heirs and their children. Because I insist, we are the descendants of liberators, not conquerors. And from here we extend our hands to Guyana. Our president, Nicolás Maduro, on 3 different occasions have tried to talk to Guyanese authorities. In fact, he offered to create a community for the development of the region, the development of the Essequibo region. What was the main condition, the basic condition? Which it must help the development of the Guyanese people, of the people from Essequibo, and to be a source of development for both Guyana and Venezuela. And this is terrible. They did not accept it. They didn't accept it. In addition to the constant threat through the Pentagon, with the European Union, with the secret friends that they have to defend themselves against Venezuela, because at the end of the day, we are not approaching this problem militarily. We are basing our case on the 1966 agreement, which is about 35 or so different formulas of negotiation to reach to a satisfactory agreement among all parts. That's why we are thankful for being here with you tonight, because there are people, there are interested, there are evil people who like to provoke a war. Some people have an interest in attacking Venezuela, and unfortunately they are using our neighbors to provoke us. But allow me to underscore, we will not go to any war. It is a sine qua non, unquestionable decision by Venezuela. And as a matter of fact, that's why there was a calling based on the Article 71 of the Venezuelan Constitution, which establishes that whenever there are topics of high interest for the nation, the people must be consulted. And there are three forms of consultation. The first one, the president in cabinet meeting, he can call for the consultation, for the referendum. Second way to do it, 2/3 of the National Assembly, legitimately. And the third one, 10% of voters. There are approximately 22 million voters out of 30 million people. Therefore, with about 2 million voters, 2.5 million voters, people, out of their own initiative, they could call for a referendum. In this case, it was, and I say this, and I say this very proudly, it was a proposal by the National Assembly to call for the referendum, and it was done unanimously, because this is no longer a problem between the government and the opposition. As our president said, this is a situation of national unity among Venezuelans. You don't have to like Nicolas Maduro. Same way that I don't have to like the opposition politicians. But there is a common interest, which is the motherland, our nation. And that's what we are defending with the referendum, the consultative referendum, which will take place on December the 3rd. And I'm not going to tire you with the 5 questions, but I will tell you 3 basic things about those questions. First, the irrevocable decision by the people of Venezuela to reject the arbitral award of 1899. Second, our solid decision to support all legal decisions based on international law, which are which are in the 1966 Geneva Agreement. And thirdly, the recognition of our brothers and sisters of the Essequibo as part of a territory of which they should have never left, because they are our brothers, our compatriots. And you probably ask yourself, because this question has usually come up, what will happen after the referendum? What is going to happen on the 4th of December? Well, first, there will be a huge Venezuelan national celebration. The approval of the 5 questions of the referendum. But most importantly, dear brothers and sisters, is that it provides a clear mandate to the Venezuelan state to continue the route, the path of international law, of treaties signed by our republic, and with the firm conviction of a people who not only won't allow anyone to take their territory from them, but it mandates the state, whoever the government happens to be, is a clear and precise mandate to that we are traveling the route of peace, dialogue, and negotiation. That's what's going to happen on the 4th of December. And in closing, I would like to say the following. Sadly, there are elements that try to place Venezuela in a bad frame with their neighbors, with our neighbors. The Petrocaribe example is categoric, because at the end, as we said, we conceive Petrocaribe as a tool for people's development, not to take advantage of the needs of the people, as the international corporations have done for more than 100 years. Because if there is a country that knows about oil, it's Venezuela. For 130 years, Venezuela has been exploiting oil. And in that process, we have been exploited, by the way, until our industry was nationalized. And I ask for your forgiveness, but I cannot believe the generosity of any international company, because they take advantage of people, they take advantage of their needs, all for the sake of profit, out of exploiting people. And on behalf of our friend Will Rangel, the president of our union, on behalf of our brothers and sisters, who some of them may be connected from Venezuela, we invite you to follow what happens in Venezuela on the 3rd of December, so you can witness a huge democratic celebration of a people inspired by its history and defending its dignity. Thank you very much. Okay. Ahora creo que tengo que ir allá abajo para responder las preguntas. Bueno, más o menos. No, excelente. Gracias.
Thank you very much. We have heard from the 3 panelists, and we are at the juncture of this panel discussion where we want to entertain questions and receive responses from the panelists. So I would ask that the microphone be brought into the audience for any questions from the audience. And while we wait for the ambassador, well, for His Excellency to return to the stage, we do have one question from the online audience. And I just want to say thank you to the ambassador for the lovely, the wonderful job that he has done with translating his comrades. I think we would actually need 2 mics, one for the panelists and one for the audience. So the first question from the online audience, the ambassador, we will provide you with the microphone. And there would be one circulating. As soon as this question is answered, we would go to the in-person audience for any questions or comments to the panel. Ambassador and the other members of the panel, how do you think the media coverage and information dissemination influence public perception and the international community's understanding of the Venezuela-Guyana border controversy?
¿De qué manera ustedes entienden que se percibe toda la controversia territorial de la Guayana Esequiba desde la perspectiva que la han proyectado los medios? ¿De qué manera los medios han influido en la forma como se percibe toda la disputa territorial, la controversia territorial, perdón? Ok, sí. Ya.
Bueno,
Well,
ciertamente
certainly
hay una intencionalidad mediática
there is a media intention
de convertir a Venezuela como en el
to
agresor.
transform Venezuela into the aggressor.
No olviden
Let's not forget,
que, como bien dijo Will,
as
desde
Will
el
said,
2015,
since 2015,
un país como Venezuela
a country like Venezuela
es una amenaza inusual y
is
extraordinaria
an
para el imperio más
unusual
poderoso del
threat
planeta.
against the most powerful country in the world.
Por lo tanto, están intentando
Therefore, they're trying
utilizar esta situación
to use this situation
para poner a Venezuela como el país
to
agresor,
place Venezuela as the aggressor,
satanizar nuestra
to
situación, nuestra revolución
demonize our revolution,
y, por supuesto,
and of course,
poner a la gente en contra de Venezuela.
to have the people against Venezuela.
No creo que lo vayan a lograr.
I don't
Entre los
think they
pueblos
will
nos
be able to
entendemos.
achieve that because
Y entre
people
los trabajadores
understand with people,
Nos entendemos.
and
Porque
us
hablamos el
workers,
mismo lenguaje
we understand each other because we speak the same language,
y que no es el lenguaje
and it is not the language
de las ganancias,
of
no
the
es el lenguaje
prophets,
de la conquista,
it's not the language of conquest,
es el lenguaje de la solidaridad entre
it's
hermanos de
the
clase.
language of the solidarity among the working class people,
Porque no hay frontera que nos divida.
because borders don't divide us, or can
Hable
divide
el
us,
idioma que se hable.
no matter what language we speak.
Por lo tanto,
Therefore,
nosotros estamos combatiendo fuertemente el tema mediático
we are fighting against the media problem,
y, como bien dijeron uno de mis amigos que está
and
sentadito por aquí,
as some of our friends were sitting there said,
con trabajo
with work
los vamos a derrotar
we will defeat
y
them.
con el ejemplo los
And
vamos a derrotar.
by example, we will defeat them. Thank you. Okay, ya. Okay, muy bien. Muy bien.
Do we have any questions from the in-person audience? Yes, we do.
Doctor, si quiere haga la pregunta en los dos idiomas, así.
Oh, ok. Bueno, lo primero es muchas gracias a los colegas que han venido y que han explicado y que han traído esa perspectiva complementaria, yo creo, a lo que se habló aquí la semana pasada. Mi pregunta sería, ¿quién está ahora a cargo como el enviado especial? ¿Hay alguien que esté desempeñando esa función en este momento? Esa sería la primera, como mismo lo hizo Norman Girvan en un momento. ¿Existe ahora alguien que esté desempeñando esa función? Esa sería la primera. Y la segunda es qué tipo de papel está jugando CARICOM en facilitar o no este diálogo y esta conversación entre Venezuela y Guyana. Y CELAC está haciendo algo, serían mis tres preguntas. So, in English, I'm asking if there is someone that is acting as the special envoyé at this time. And second, what is the role of CARICOM? And third, what is the role of CELAC in this type of facilitating this conversation?
Okay. La primera es si existe, la primera pregunta es si existe algún buen oficiante que esté en este momento trabajando como oficiante. La respuesta es no, ahorita te respondo. Y las dos siguientes preguntas, que si CARICOM y CELAC están trabajando en función de lograr un entendimiento en toda esta controversia. La de los buenos oficiantes los puedo responder yo.
Este ejercicio levantarme y sentarme me va a poner.
This is a good exercise, getting up and getting down all the time.
Hasta el 2015
All the way to 2015,
hubo buenos oficiantes.
There have been 4 good officers.
A partir de allí,
From there,
al negar esta posibilidad y llevarnos a la Corte Internacional,
this possibility has
se
not
acabó
been
el tema de los
replaced.
oficiantes.
There has
Primero
been no
con
more good
Ban
officers
Ki-moon,
because they took us to the
y
ICJ.
luego lo ratifica
First,
Guterres
Ban
sin
Ki-moon
la
and
aprobación de
then
Venezuela.
Antonio Guterres
Eso es importante
took
que
us
se tenga claro.
to the ICJ without
Por lo
the
mismo
approval
que
of
les decía,
Venezuela. This is what I was
no
telling
puede
you.
haber ninguna decisión que no
cannot
sea un acuerdo
be
entre las dos partes.
A decision that is not jointly, bilaterally agreed.
Por lo tanto, el último buen oficiante,
Therefore, the last good
creo que fue
officer,
que falleció, por cierto,
el noruego,
Eh,
the Norwegian
ya
good
queda
officer,
cesante el tema y nos llevan
and that
entonces
was the end.
arbitrariamente
So,
a la Corte Internacional de
arbitrarily,
Justicia.
they have taken us to the ICJ. Y la pregunta es sobre, la siguiente pregunta es si CARICOM y la CELAC están haciendo algo en función de tratar de solventar la... Claro. Okay, well, I will do my best. Well, a diplomatic answer to your question. And a short answer is I really don't know. What I can tell you is that indeed the Venezuelan government, specifically, our friends mentioned it in their addresses, and I also mentioned in my readings, is that it is a fact that Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro, he has actually asked, on the one hand, the President of Guyana for dialogue, to sit down, to explore possibilities, to negotiate, and so on. And as we have said here, unfortunately, His Excellency Irfan Ali has not replied positively to such requests for conversations, dialogue with the Venezuelan president, with the Venezuelan government. But that's one thing. In addition to that, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro has also asked CARICOM as a group to facilitate such conversations. So not only President Maduro has asked President Irfan Ali to sit down and speak, but as part of the Venezuelan proposal, or the proposal by the Venezuelan president, has been that CARICOM could be the framework that may facilitate such negotiation, dialogue, exploration. Well, that's in the formal sense, to formally respond to your question. Now, in a more informal way, and just by observing, really from the point of view, not so much answering as a representative of the government, whom I am, but more in terms of a person who just follows the news and so on, I noticed that there is a lot of interest on behalf of many of well-intentioned Caribbean leaders who are very, very keen to assist Venezuela, Guyana, and so on, both the president, governments, and peoples, in order to try to solve this, the territorial controversy and to find a peaceful solution and so on. Namely, the Prime Minister of Barbados, the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, also the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. So I think CARICOM generally has the willingness to assist in trying to find a peaceful solution to this issue.
In terms of CELAC, to be honest, I have no idea. I will find out and let you know if there is something that has been done at CELAC level in order to contribute to the solution of this territorial controversy. That will be it. Thank you.
Yes, we have another question. Yes.
Buenas noches. Yo soy venezolano, pero he vivido aquí 40 años y me siento parte de Venezuela, venezolano, me siento venezolano porque viví 10 años allá como adulto, pero también me siento como parte de las Islas Occidentales y comparto el cricket con Guyana. Además, cuando vivía en Venezuela me decían guyanés porque hablaba como un guyanés allá. Y nací en el estado Bolívar. Mi pregunta es, para clarificar, ¿cuándo fue que Guyana llevó a Venezuela a la ICJ? ¿En qué año? ¿En 2015? Para quien pueda contestar. Sí, ¿cuándo fue que Venezuela fue llevado a la Corte Suprema, a la ICJ, perdón? ¿En qué año? ¿En 2015?
The question is, when was Venezuela taken to the, can you hear me?
Yes.
When was Venezuela taken to the ICJ? It was in 2018, fue en 2018. In 2018 it was taken to the ICJ, and in 2020 the ICJ ruled that it had authority, jurisdiction over the case. That more or less that was the sequence in terms of years. But as Jacobo said, ever since 2016, and at that time the Secretary General of the UN was the previous one, Ban Ki-moon, it was through him that all the explorations from the Guyana side began with him in terms of taking unilaterally the case to the ICJ without the acknowledgement of Venezuela. But the whole case was taken to the ICJ in 2018 to respond to your question.
Quiero decir que ustedes me han destapado los ojos. Estaba un poquito ciego con las circunstancias sobre este tema. Estoy un poquito más claro. Muchas gracias.
Gracias.
Thank you. We have another question from the
Hello, buenas
audience.
noches. Well, I will say it in English.
Sure.
And maybe you could translate in Spanish for. I was very surprised. You see, the question of the CARICOM, right? CARICOM. When CARICOM against, in other words, go in favor of Guyana, right? And my answer really and truly, I believe, maybe they don't have the history maybe completely of what is going on, what went through of this Essequibo history, right? And that called me, I mean, it shocked me that even Trinidad vote in favor of Guyana, when in the previous time this wasn't happening, right? No. One thing very important, I understand that really and truly Trinidad and Venezuela, in other words, Trinidad with the country that have more trade signed is with Venezuela. That is a diplomatic situation, right? Agreement. You know? So when it happened, let's say, the support, and I could say a blind support certainly, to Guyana with all, I expect some of them supposed to be going, let's say, abstain or not so quickly, right? My surprise was Cuba. Cuba was in there too, and Cuba voted with them in favor of Guyana. So, no, I just saying what happened, right? So the point is that what I keep on saying over and over to my colleagues in Venezuela too, is that, you know, something very important is that what is happening now with you all, right? It's good to come and try to give social consciousness of the people of the English Caribbean, because some people who eventually, they will know the real truth of the situation. Stick to this 1899 agreement, right? They stick to that. So really and truly, sometimes we don't know it. I remember when Chavez came to power, right? And when he was there in the first 5 years, they used to have him like the, let's say, the dictator and the coup leader, etc., etc. But what is happening after? When in 2004, the documentary came out called Revolution Will Not Be Televised. La revolución no será transmitida, right? When documentary came and it was in Trinidad, people started to have then a different concept. Social consciousness for the people of the English Caribbean is very important because really and truly it's very easy to divide and rule. Thank you.
Thank you. Ambassador, any comments, Ambassador?
Dilo otra vez en español, pero resumidamente.
One sec, can you use the mic?
Ajá. La presencia de ustedes aquí es importantísima, porque realmente es una forma de darle conciencia social al pueblo caribeño, del angloparlante, me explico, ¿verdad? Entonces yo decía que realmente con el aspecto de CARICOM, a mí me sorprendió justamente cuando CARICOM de repente justamente a Guyana, ¿verdad? A sabiendas de que realmente existe unos ciertos acuerdos como Petrocaribe, etcétera, etcétera. Pero también hubo dice que no se alinearon, creo que fue San Vicente de la Granadina y Dominica, creo yo, si no me equivoco. Entonces, ¿qué ocurre? Siempre, o sea, he dicho yo que realmente esa es referencia a muchos colegas míos en Venezuela. El Caribe angloparlante hay que tratar de buscar una salida a ese equilibrio. ¿En qué sentido? En explicarle al pueblo del angloparlante la historia del Esequibo, cómo comenzó y a qué se debe esto. Porque generalmente generalmente ellos tienen el concepto de que únicamente están con lo que se alinea justamente Guyana, es con el lauro de 1899, ¿entiendes? Exactamente. Entonces, ¿qué ocurre? En eso, incluso ya hay, aquí mismo han habido hasta periodistas que han salido hablando y viendo Venezuela no solamente ya como el grande de la cosa, sino como un Venezuela super imperialista. Eso ocurrió muchos años atrás también. Y lo ven así de esa manera porque realmente piensan que Venezuela, por su fortaleza, puede invadir justamente a Guyana. Entonces, esta parte donde ustedes se presentan aquí, para mí es una especie de conciencia social justamente para el pueblo. Gracias.
Ambassador?
It's okay, no.
Okay.
Next one.
All right. Do we have any other questions from the in-person audience? Yes.
Thank you very much. I have more of a short comment, if you may, but I would be happy for the panel to respond accordingly. Sure. By the way, I'm Ozzie Warwick, Chief Education and Research Officer of the Oilfield Workers Trade Union and General Secretary of the Joint Trade Union Movement. Firstly, I want to say that this issue is a very serious one and has the potential to not only destabilize Venezuela, if allowed to, but destabilize the entire region.
Oh, okay. Este es un problema muy serio que tiene el potencial de desestabilizar no solamente a Venezuela, sino a toda la región. Go ahead.
So I thank the Cipriani College for taking a very important and bold step by allowing both sides to be heard. We just have to fix the technical part of it.
And, Ambassador, if when you're translating, Ambassador, if you could also speak into the mic, as we may have some persons.
I know. Okay. Right. Sorry. Part of the technical. Go ahead.
The second point I wish to make, to me, this issue has less to do with a territorial dispute and more to do with the role of multinational corporations in destabilizing and fueling conflict.
Creo que esta disputa, más que territorial, es un asunto, un problema en el cual se están beneficiando transnacionales petroleras que tienen mucho que ganar en todo este conflicto.
And we should not ignore or take for granted the role of ExxonMobil in fueling this conflict.
Y no se puede ignorar ni pasar por debajo de la mesa el rol que está jugando la Exxon en exacerbar toda la situación en este conflicto, en esta disputa.
And the role of foreign empires. The Caribbean, for most of our colonial history, was a zone of war.
Y hay que entender que el rol que han tenido los imperios, especialmente históricamente aquí en el Caribe, ha sido un rol guerrerista.
A zone of extreme violence.
El Caribe ha sido una zona de extrema violencia.
With slavery and indentureship.
Como por ejemplo la esclavitud y la esclavitud forzada.
Fueled by European empires.
Que fue alimentada por imperios europeos.
Now, as independent nation states, we should not allow ourselves to be manipulated by foreign capital and multinational enterprise.
Ahora, como países independientes, no deberíamos dejarnos manipular por el capital extranjero y por multinacionales extranjeras.
We must hold firm to this region being a zone of peace.
Tenemos que hacer todo lo posible para que esta zona siga siendo una zona de paz.
And let me say to my Caribbean brothers and sisters who are listening, we must never take peace for granted.
Y déjeme decirle a mis compañeros y compañeras caribeños que nos están escuchando, no podemos tomar a la paz como algo, como un hecho, sino que es algo que hay que luchar por él.
And we have to do everything that is possible to preserve that peace.
Tenemos que hacer todo lo posible por preservar la paz.
Therefore, dialogue is crucial.
Por lo tanto, el diálogo es crucial.
The parties must talk.
Todas las partes tienen que dialogar.
In international relations, when there are conflicting parties and they are not talking, the conflict becomes irreversible.
En los conflictos, cuando las partes no dialogan, las consecuencias pueden ser irreversibles.
And I think we heard it very clear. Venezuela wants to talk.
Y lo hemos escuchado claramente. Venezuela quiere dialogar.
And we talk, the role of CARICOM is to ensure that Guyana goes to the table to talk.
Y uno de los roles de CARICOM, Guayana vaya a la mesa de la negociación y converse.
For the sake of the future of our region.
Por el beneficio del futuro de nuestra región.
A zone of peace.
Como una zona de paz.
A zone of dignity.
Una zona de dignidad.
A zone of respect.
Y una zona de respeto.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, Tom. Any comments, feedback,
Comentarios
Ambassador, from the
acerca
panel?
de lo que dijo el compañero Ossi, sí, algo.
Bueno, para nosotros como delegación venezolana, ratificar lo que hemos dicho de nuestra realidad,
want to stress what we have
desmentir cualquier
from our reality to deny
momento o que de guerra. Nosotros jamás vamos a ir contra ningún pueblo. Nosotros nos acogemos al diálogo, a la paz, a la integración.
Peace, interaction.
También sabemos que hay una intencionalidad de satanizar toda la forma de cooperación que desde Venezuela hemos desarrollado para la integración de los pueblos.
That we have employed within the region
Jamás
with our people.
Queremos utilizar nuestros recursos para invadir
Want
ni
to
para
use our
comportarnos
resources
como imperialistas,
to invade or to act as imperialists.
para contribuir con el estado de bienestar dentro de la soberanía de los pueblos y la autodeterminación de cada país.
Well-being, the welfare state.
Y ratificamos pues
And we
a
ratify
esta universidad
our
nuestra
appreciation to this
gratitud
university
y a ustedes y todas,
and to all of
y a
you
usted, embajador, por la
and to you,
invitación
ambassador,
para decir nuestra realidad
to allow us
ante
to tell our truth to you.
este pueblo que por supuesto con las dificultades
In spite of all the technical difficulties.
Bueno, las técnicas, agradecer también, por cierto, el esfuerzo
But we appreciate
que
the
hizo el
efforts
personal, lo
of
técnico,
all the
pero
technical
también
personnel.
las dificultades comunicacionales desde el punto de vista del idioma.
But also the
Para los
issues
que
with
no
language
hablamos
barrier
inglés.
for those of us who don't speak English.
Pero bueno, seguiremos
But we will continue
por el mundo
going
hablando
through
de la
the
verdad
world
de
to speak
Venezuela
about the realities of
y
Venezuela
hablando
and
del
to
respeto y
speak
la
about
autodeterminación de los pueblos.
respect
Saludos.
of our peoples. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have a question here which is interesting as it follows the comment from Comrade Ozzy Warwick. How can organized labor contribute to advocating for a peaceful resolution to the border dispute? And what role do you see for workers in promoting regional stability?
¿Qué manera puede el movimiento laboral mundial y los obreros contribuir por la paz y la estabilidad de toda esta controversia que se está presentando? ¿Me escucha?
Bueno, los pueblos, los trabajadores, los iguales,
Workers,
a lo que, como decía Jacobo, nos entendemos
as
porque
Jacobo said,
nos mueven
workers,
los mismos principios.
they are moved by
La
the
misma
same
conciencia.
principles, by the same consciousness.
Nosotros creemos que
We believe that
con acuerdos
through by
a nivel
agreements,
regionales
by
y
reaching agreements,
divulgarlos al mundo
and by
con nuestra
exposing
verdad,
the
con la
to the
verdad que
world,
internacionalmente que hemos establecido
and
en el acuerdo de Ginebra.
following the 1966
Y
Geneva
bueno, todo lo que
Agreement,
explicamos,
as we
desmentir
explained here.
la mediática que
The
históricamente, bueno,
the
desde
media
25 años para atrás, para acá,
From
ha venido
quite a while, the media has been
atacando
attacking
al pueblo
the
venezolano,
people of Venezuela,
a la integración.
has been attacking integration.
Creo que los compañeros
I-
trabajadores
I
que
think
nos estén
workers,
oyendo, pues agradecemos mucho desde Venezuela,
we thank
como
from
estado de
Venezuela
solidaridad
all the expressions of solidarity,
con Venezuela por la paz, por la
solidarity for
integración
Venezuela, peace, integration,
y por el respeto.
and for
Insistimos
respect. We
que
insist
somos un país de paz
we
y de
insist
respeto a la
that we are a country
autodeterminación,
that
de la
we're
soberanía.
for respect
Creo
and
que
for
de esa
sovereignty.
manera
So I
nos
think
puede contribuir con
we can, workers can contribute
la paz y resolver esta situación de una vez por todas
with peace and trying to
que
solve
hoy nos conlleva con el pueblo guyanés.
this issue that is
O
taking
mejor dicho, con el
out
gobierno guyanés.
the situation that the government of Guyana is, the approach that they are taking.
Do we have any further questions from the? Yes, we do.
Hi, good night. I heard a commentator this week use the CIA Book of Records to compare the 650 soldiers Guyana has to the 250,000 Venezuela has. What people, the mistake people make and what they don't understand about Venezuela is that when you attack Venezuela, there are 36 million Venezuela. Every man, woman, and child will come out to defend its country. As reflected by the fact that it was the National Assembly, El Congreso, that unanimously voted to hold the referendum next month. Yes? I've seen and heard reports of the marches that have been held in Venezuela in the weeks leading up to the referendum, where opposition parties, using their colors, have marched with members of the government and have even given speeches at the rallies that they've held, yes, in support of this. And they are sworn enemies, yes? But when it comes to defending Venezuela, I have a serious problem with, a serious problem comparing what is happening in Israel with Palestine and what people think that could happen between Venezuela and Guyana. That's never going to happen. But the world's attitude towards what's happening over there and what would happen here if there is a peaceful penetration of the area in dispute by Venezuela, yes, for the sake of the people who live there, yes, that would be very different than going and killing and leveling all the buildings and so on. That's definitely not going to happen, and we're going to see it. But CARICOM did issue, you haven't seen it as yet, I sent you a copy, did issue a statement this afternoon where they talk about not there being war and that Venezuela shouldn't start a war and so on, which is absolute nonsense. That is never going to happen.
Señor Raúl, ¿puede resumidamente decirlo también en español para que
No, lo que decía es que hubo un reportaje aquí en Trinidad, una señora que usó un libro que tiene el CIA de datos mundiales y comparó el ejército de Guyana, que son 650 personas, con el cuarto millón de soldados que tiene y soldadas que tiene Venezuela. Y el comentario que hice es de que cuando tú buscas agredir a Venezuela, no son un cuarto millón de soldados, son 36 millones de personas, hombres, mujeres y niños, que van a salir a defender a su país. Y hice el comentario, como usted dijo, de que fue el Congreso unánimemente que aprobó que hubiera el referendo. Y también comenté de que reportajes que he escuchado y visto de que en las marchas que se han efectuado para hacer que la gente venga, vote el 3 de diciembre, que miembros de otros partidos de oposición, han marchado con los con el partido de gobierno y han montado las tarimas y hablado en rally del gobierno, insistiendo que la gente vaya a votar por esto. Pero era más comentario que pregunta.
Gracias. Exactamente. Esta activación del derecho constitucional
This constitutional right that has
que
been
tiene el pueblo
put in
a
place
opinar
by
y que
the
se va a
people,
hacer realidad.
and that will
El
become
3 de diciembre.
reality on the 3rd of December.
Ya previamente el 19 hicimos un
On the
simulacro
19th of November, we did a mock election.
y de lo que vamos en el proceso de divulgación, más que campaña, divulgación de
More than campaigning, we are
ese referendo consultivo,
informing
porque
people.
en ese aspecto es inédito.
In that sense, this is unique.
No se trata
It's
de
not
los partidos, ni nada
about
por el
political
estilo. De hecho,
parties or nothing like that. As a matter of fact,
los comandos se llaman Venezuela toda.
the name of
Son los
the
comandos de
campaign
divulgación, de
command
información,
is the whole of Venezuela,
de
Venezuela,
debate,
which
de
promotes
explicación
debate, information,
histórica de las
communication,
5 preguntas.
the historical background of the 5 questions.
Y por eso
So,
creemos que
we
hay
believe
22 millones de
that
votantes,
22
¿no?
million of
Están
Venezuelan
estamos
voters,
activos para participar
all of us who are active
en el
to
proceso
participate
del 3 de diciembre.
on the 3rd of December in the referendum.
Estamos seguros que todos vamos a participar, los 22 millones.
We're sure that the whole 22
Los que
million
votemos por la
voters
patria,
will
los
participate.
que creemos en
All of us who
la patria, que
vote
llevamos la patria
and
en
believe
nuestros
in
corazones,
our motherland,
y los que no
with-
votan,
and
no
those who
participen,
don't vote
que
or
no
don't
creen
want
la
to
patria,
vote and then don't
que
believe in our
automáticamente
motherland,
están
those
a favor de la ExxonMobil.
automatically will be voting
Por
for
eso todos vamos a
ExxonMobil.
participar, los 22
That's why
millones.
all of us, the whole 22 million voters in Venezuela, will participate.
Gracias.
Thank you. Any other final comments as we wind down, as we have one to the front?
Pleasant good afternoon, everyone. My question is directed to the panel. I have understood, and I've been to the first panel discussion with Guyana, right? My question is, if the International Caribbean Court of Justice, they made a decision based on the evidence that has been brought forward, if not accepted, will there be any other dialogue from that point? Or can it be appealed, can it be revisited at a later date? Thank you.
So let me make sure I understood the question. If the case is heard by the ICJ and the result is not favorable of Venezuela, there is a way for Venezuela to appeal?
Correct, yes.
Correct. Si en caso de que luego que se llegase a ventilar, ¿no? Este caso en el Tribunal Internacional de Justicia, si el resultado no fuese favorable a Venezuela, si existe un nivel de apelación para de alguna manera manifestar el desacuerdo o volver a revisar el caso dentro de lo que es el Internacional de Justicia. Si existe posibilidades de apelar ante una decisión que no vaya en favor de Venezuela.
Bueno, primero que es un proceso muy largo.
First of all, it's a long process.
Seguimos apelando al 33 de la Carta de las Naciones Unidas,
We continue abiding by Article 33 of
que
the
es lo que ha
UN
obligado
Charter.
a que nosotros neguemos la instancia de la Corte Internacional.
Based on Article 33 of the UN Charter, we accept the jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice
Porque no hay interpretación posible.
because there is no possible interpretation.
O sea, si las dos partes no se ponen de acuerdo,
If
se continúa el
No.
proceso de negociación.
if both parties are not in agreement to go to court, the negotiation must continue.
Y si se produce esa situación de un fallo de la Corte Internacional,
In case that there is a decision by the
Bueno.
International Court of Justice,
apelaremos primero a la denuncia internacional,
we'll make sure that we'll denounce it internationally,
porque a la larga es un despojo.
because we're talking about dispossession.
Y en segundo lugar,
And secondly,
apelaremos será a las instancias superiores de la propia ONU,
we would appeal to
Consejo de Seguridad,
higher
qué sé yo,
offices of the UN, I don't know, maybe the Security Council,
sobre la base de que hay
based on
una violación flagrante al
based on
tratado
on
del
a
66
evident violation of
y una
the
agresión contra
1966 agreement and an aggression against Venezuela.
Por lo tanto, estamos agotando todas las vías posibles de diálogo en esa
Therefore,
instancia
We're
de la
trying
ONU
to,
y
go to,
y del tratado.
to make sure that all possibilities of dialogue are considered.
Understood. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, and I believe that's it for questions, and I have no further questions from the online audience. Ambassador, at this stage, I would ask each of the panelists to give 2 minutes, maximum 2 minutes, wrap-up thoughts on the discussions.
Finalmente,
Or would it just be you, because I
Okay.
know the translation?
well, I'll translate. Yeah, no problem. I say my 2 minutes as well. Para finalizar, deseamos que los panelistas utilicen el podium para expresar una idea final que dure no más de 2 minutos.
Bueno,
Well,
ratificar las gracias
first, I would like to thank you
y por supuesto ratificar
and
al pueblo de Trinidad y
to
Tobago,
ratify to the people
a
of
nuestros
Trinidad and
hermanos
Tobago,
trabajadores, trabajadoras,
brothers and sisters, workers,
la solidaridad
to emphasize on
Venezuela.
solidarity from Venezuela
con el Caribe
with the Caribbean.
y sigamos apostando a la paz.
We must continue striving for peace.
No permitamos
We cannot allow
que la ExxonMobil,
that ExxonMobil,
quien es
which
el
is
instrumento
the instrument, the tool,
bélico que está utilizando
the war
el
tool
imperio,
used by the empire,
nos lleve a la guerra.
that they will take us to war.
Ratificamos nuestro pensamiento bolivariano,
We continue abiding by
pensamiento
our Bolivarian
de
doctrine,
Miranda, y todos nuestros héroes y heroínas
ideas of
que siempre
Francisco de Miranda,
apuntaron
our
a la
heroes
paz
and
y a
heroines
la-
that
a la liberación de los pueblos.
always
Muchas gracias.
wanted peace and liberation of Venezuela.
Bueno,
Well,
una reflexión final
a final reflection
a propósito de lo que decía nuestro hermano Ozzy
based
Warwick.
on what our brother Ozzy said.
Lo terrible de una guerra
The most terrible thing about war
es que sabemos cómo empieza.
is that we know how it
Lo que nadie
begins,
sabe es cómo termina.
but no one knows how it ends.
Y creo que de eso tenemos en
And
América
we have lots of stories like that in the Americas.
bibliotecas enteras
Whole libraries,
de pueblos que todavía no
of
han sanado sus cicatrices por la
peoples
guerra.
who have not been able to heal their wounds from war.
Y la paz es un lujo que hay
And
que cuidar.
peace is a luxury that we must preserve.
Y nosotros apostamos a la paz.
And we want to go for peace.
Porque yo no me quiero imaginar un hijo mío en una guerra.
I don't want to even
Con las
imagine
consecuencias
uh,
físicas y mentales que pudiera traer
with all the
una
consequences, physical,
conflagración.
that consequences of a war could bring to them, to our children.
Segunda cosa,
Secondly,
a propósito de los 22 millones,
based on the figure that you gave us, the 22 million,
hay un mandato expreso de nuestro pueblo.
there is an
Y es lo que vamos a
express
demostrar el 3 de
mandate
diciembre.
by the people, and we will show that on the 3rd of December.
Ahora, lo más importante de ese mandato,
Now, the most important thing about this
no les quede
mandate,
absolutamente ninguna duda,
no doubt,
es la
there is
paz
no doubt,
por
is
todos los medios.
peace no matter what.
Y a eso estamos comprometidos todos.
And we are committed to that.
Y por último,
And finally,
bueno, primero que para mí siempre es un placer venir a Trinidad.
for me, it is a great pleasure to come to Trinidad.
He tenido el privilegio pues de venir algunas veces.
I have the privilege to come to Trinidad before.
Siempre encontramos algo bueno y nuevo.
We always find something new and
Y
good,
esta fue para nosotros, o ha sido,
and this activity has been
una oportunidad de oro
a golden opportunity
para exponer nuestra verdad,
to convey our truth.
porque además nosotros no estamos
Because
engañando a nadie,
besides, we're not deceiving anyone,
ni tenemos doble discurso,
and we don't have a double speech.
tan claro como la luna llena,
It is as clear as a full moon
cuando uno la ve en el horizonte.
when you look at it on the firmament.
Venimos a defender una verdad.
We come here to defend a
Por
truth,
eso los invitamos a que estén
and
pendientes
that's
de lo
why
que va a
we
pasar
ask you to follow up
el 3 de diciembre,
what happens on the 3rd of December, this Sunday.
y por supuesto que todos
And of
pasemos
course that all of us
unas hermosísimas navidades
have a very happy Merry Christmas
y en sana paz.
and in good
Buenas
health.
tardes.
Good afternoon. Maybe the vote of thanks or just bueno, it's up to you. I think they have said it all.
Suéltate tú solo.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, my task, which initially was supposed to be just to open the event, and now the moderator has come to that end. But I would want to say that the college as an institution will continue to interrogate issues like this, conduct research. We are committed to always providing a balanced depiction of issues like this. So we look forward to having further discussions like this. At this point, I would want to invite Mr. Colin Bartholomew to provide the vote of thanks.
Como universidad estamos muy agradecidos, muy contentos de realizar actividades como esta y mostrar los dos lados del debate, y esperamos teniendo futuros eventos donde se de asuntos que están ocurriendo en nuestra región. Please go ahead.
Yes, and good evening. Of course, standing on the protocols already established, I would like to add my own voice and expressions of thanks. Ambassador, you have really been a champion and you have assisted us in fulfilling this evening's forum. So we really want to express thanks to you and your entire team, not only for really agreeing to be a part of this forum, but getting these bodies, these gentlemen here this evening to have this forum. I want to stand on some protocols, and I just want to thank the ambassador for your inputs, extending even further into translation services. So really thank you. Thank the rest of the panel for really joining us, Wills Rangel and Jacobo Torres. Yes, really want to thank you for forming and establishing a part of this panel. We want to thank those of you who are physically in attendance, as well as the over 300 participants online for being a part of this forum, and especially thanking you, in spite of the technical challenges, for staying the course even to the end. We want to thank everyone for really being a part of this, the technical team, even for soldiering on in spite of the challenges, and all the assistance we got here this evening. And on behalf of the Cipriani College of Labor and Cooperative Studies, our director, Dr. Andre Vincent Henry, we thank you, wish you Godspeed and a safe journey home, whether within the shores of Trinidad and Tobago or overseas. Thank you very much.
Bueno, excelente, muchísimas gracias. Estuvo contenta. Y eso, agradecieron. Bueno, sí, los problemitas.
Eso lo van a editar.
Sí. Exacto, y lo van a montar porque, claro, cuando ellos no, todavía estaban resolviendo.